Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Frame by Frame podcast, your podcast for all things UX and UI. Now, compared to some previous episodes, this week's episode will be rather short in comparison, but nonetheless, it will be an important subject, and that is site analytics and your portfolio. We'll be looking at such questions as why should I bother with site analytics? How do they help me? How can I break down the information? How do I know that someone looks at my portfolio? Is that something that can be reflected in analytics? Absolutely, it can. Now, those of you who might not be sure, maybe you have a web host where you don't have the analytics, but the site analytics we're speaking about is not just how many visitors you have and how many hits and the traffic, but also where they are based. For example, I use Wix as my portfolio and website host, and without having to pay anything extra, or indeed pay anything at all, I'm able to see exactly, well, not only the country, but also the specific city. And I found this invaluable for knowing whether a recruiter or someone who works at a company that with whom I've applied for a job for, whether they've actually looked at it. And therefore, I am able to tell whether a company, for example, is serious or whether they are giving you a really good experience in their recruitment process. But yes, let's not just look at those questions, but let's have a look at the general overview. And I know my co-host Will was burning to bring this topic up. Will, maybe you want to go first and tell our listeners more about site analytics and how
Absolutely.
important
So,
they can be.
first, just to preface, I realized that I have never seen any posts from the job seeking community on LinkedIn about site analytics on your portfolio. And I started to get really confused about why the hell that is.
That is
Um,
true.
and I've realized, like, you know what? All right, we're going to be the ones to talk about it then, because I think it's massively important. For example, my portfolio is hosted on Squarespace, and I had it up all throughout 2023. So I have all of my usage and visitor data through the whole year. And just I'm realizing how damn important it is for me because it's telling me like what platform people are visiting from, whether it's Safari, Google Chrome, Firefox, etc., whether it's desktop or mobile visitors, how many people are only clicking on just the first case study and ignoring the rest, stuff like that. And
Mm.
it's showing some massively important insights that I realize like are really only going to help me throughout my job search here. And so that's why I really wanted to talk about this today. I think its importance cannot be understated, cannot be overstated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, understated, overstated. I think I think some people who either know them or don't know them do overestimate or overvalue or undervalue data analytics. But yes, it's something that is not come across. I've certainly not come across it either on LinkedIn. And to be honest, I think it would be nice if, especially in our world of design, UX and UI design, I think it would be really nice if there were posts that were more to do with, if you have posts that are about your portfolios, I think we should have fewer posts, if any posts, where it's all five do's and don'ts, or what you're doing wrong with your portfolio,
You're
how
not
you can
using
do this, you can
analytics.
do that. I actually think, yeah, you're not using analytics, you're just saying your opinion, right? I mean, I have my cynicism towards LinkedIn and, let's just say, certain cultures, and I don't mean demographic cultures like race and everything. I mean certain quarters of the industry and how some people are in it. Um, but yes, data analytics is something that I think is actually far more invaluable and insightful as to whether your portfolio is effective. I mean, of course, you could have the best portfolio in the world. It doesn't mean that a recruiter, hiring manager, or a tech person is going to have a look at it, but it will give you an idea of what are the highlights of your portfolio, i.e., what your what your visitors are looking at and what your visitors aren't looking at. So it can really give you a good amount of insight to cater your portfolio to be better, to showcase your talents, your experience. And it's not something where it's something that is common sense. It's not like where you come across it to the point where it's obvious. It's something you have to dig deep in, but that is the beauty of it, is you're developing yourself. You're actually getting more acquainted with analytics. Yeah. So, what do you think, Zach? I mean, obviously, Will's given his input. I've given mine. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually don't use analytics on my portfolio. My portfolio, I actually slimmed all the way down to the bare minimum because I'm building one.
Yeah, I was going to say
But
you've
I,
not updated it in a long while. I've seen it, or at least
yeah, and
one
I took
website,
I
and
took
it's
literally like everything down. I'm rewriting all my case studies because I was actually just talking to Will about this earlier. I'm looking for a way to actually make mine more interactive. Uh, I'd like to visually key people in who are looking through my portfolio at the main bits of information. So I'm sticking to the, headline, subtext, but I really want to focus on like incorporating things I'm good at, like interaction design and, a user experience. If I want somebody to remember my stuff, we got to go into the TikTok theory here, and people have super short attention spans. So the quicker you get them addicted to doing something on your case study, which is going through your information, they're going to keep going through the information. And so I'm really pushing to make it more interactive, but in the same sense, I don't know if that's going to work. So I will be running analytics on that attempt. Yeah, I don't think it could hurt you. And since you're in the industry of product UX and UI design, you should be looking at analytics anyway to inform what you're doing. And apparently nobody's thinking of this because I obviously didn't until Will brought it up, and I was like, wow, yeah, I'm actually not
yeah.
doing
I'll
analytics on
I'll
my portfolio.
confess. I'll confess, I didn't really think about it. I mean, I knew of data analytics because I do look at, as I said in my opening statement, that I do look at the analytics to see who's looked at it in terms of recruiters. But it wasn't something I thought about bringing to the fore in terms of having a discussion or uh, stressing how important that data analytics can be. I think actually, if there were more posts about not just data analytics, but things that were actually core to the portfolio, not just opinions, but facts, I think actually people would have a better idea of what to do with their
Absolutely.
portfolio.
Yeah. For example, I was looking at my analytics right before this from last year. Now, I made a big update to my portfolio in August, sometime around August or September. I added a new case study, and it was my most impressive one so far. And immediately in September, I had the most views on my portfolio ever, like even more than in the late winter hiring season of like February, March. And so that told me, like, okay, even though there's usually a little bit less hiring going on in the fall, like this case study got me way more attention. So I need to do more of this style or more of this impact. So like that's one massive example of me learning from the analytics and seeing what I should really be doing. And I'm always digging to try to figure out more.
Okay, one thing I gotta bring up though, because not only have I read this recently, um, but speaking of analytics and metrics, there was something funny I read, and it was that the more we measure something, the more we mismanage these things. And I'll bring our podcast in for an example. We had a day where maybe it was a college class. We had however many hundred people download an episode of our podcast. Yeah.
300, 300 something, 350 in terms of the who we think were students.
Absolutely. Well, guess what? Those metrics are now in our data. So, like Google Analytics, it keeps everything. It's no different than measuring the gas mileage in your car. If you miss
Mm-hmm.
one time on a purchase on gas in your car and you're adding up those metrics regularly, something's going to be off and you're going to think your car now has worse output. Like it's not so conservative with gas anymore because you missed that. Same thing with our podcast analytics. We had one episode that shot up 300 something, and now
Yeah.
it looks like it's crashing on our stats because we don't have that every day in one shot. Like, that is not how our metrics
Yeah.
have worked in the past. And so now we can't really
But
judge
we
our
are
metrics.
still number 25, though. We are still number 25 in all-time German podcasts, but we have actually dropped quite a lot of places since. But having said that, sorry, just to digress, Zach, I think that the stats, I've kind of not taken them too seriously apart from the general one where we're still number 25. But yeah, that it does impact it because I don't even think we've got an episode since where it's even got over 100 downloads, apart from our New Year's one, just to mention that.
Yeah, and so instead of, like, yes, they are valuable. Metrics and analytics of your sites and products and all this information is very, very, very important. But you have to think there are outliers, and maybe sometimes we're going to make changes because of information that's actually misleading us to making these changes. And then it's no different than with your product. You'll then either perform worse or maybe you perform better, and it's not even related to that. Maybe it's a weird outlier somewhere that turned everything around on you. Yeah, so as much as I appreciate the analytics, I do want to stress that it's not something I solely focus on or make it a huge point to focus on. And I don't think other designers should do this if you're doing it for your portfolio, because remember, there are other designers out there scoping portfolios. Before I got into the industry, I don't know how many portfolios I scoped through. And as a graphic designer, I looked through thousands and thousands of portfolios, and I wasn't hiring. I'm just looking, it starts to mess with the metrics.
I mean, just out of curiosity, Will, how many sessions would you get on average a day? I mean, for me, to be honest, I've not really applied for a lot of jobs lately, but I would say on average, since maybe January, I would say I've probably got one a day or one every 2 days. What would you say yours were, Will?
This is tricky. Obviously, viewer count fluctuates with the hiring seasons. Let's see. I've had times where I've had multiple in a day, and then there are some times where it's zero for a couple days in a row. I can actually switch my tabs and go figure it out. I'm just going to change my mic settings.
That's what's happened to me. I think since November, the most amount of hits or sessions I got in one day was 13, and that was on January the 10th. January the 12th was 8. January 15th was 7. That was really the peak.
Over this month so far, the month of February, I've had 3 days at 0. My highest was 15 visits on February 10th. I don't know what happened that day. I don't remember what day of the week it was. Wait a sec. February 10th. That's the day I proposed to my girlfriend. Was that everybody just clicking my post that day and then going to my portfolio? What the hell? That's funny.
People stalked you, man. People stalked you. Yeah, you had good news.
Yeah,
that's cool. Things were going. So.
I had 107 on September 28th, 2023. I think that was at the peak of when I was applying for jobs.
That's
but
awesome.
I've not had anything since.
Yeah, I think this month so far I'm averaging around 5 per day, and I'm not really. I haven't sent an application this month, so I
haven't been using LinkedIn. I haven't really been using LinkedIn lately. I've got my own reasons for that because, well, I just don't think it's worth using it, to be honest. So that's probably why I've not got as many hits. And also, I modified some privacy settings on my LinkedIn, so I've gone down from maybe 600 profile views over the last 90 days down to 320, which is sinking anyway, which I don't mind. And searches, they're fewer as well. But again, I've not really been using LinkedIn as of late, so I think that's also why.
LinkedIn actually does pretty. It does affect your profile view or your portfolio views and stuff. It actually is, I would say, does a good job in that aspect. There's a lot of things about LinkedIn maybe that could be better. But
Yeah, I've got more
yeah,
complaints than compliments with LinkedIn. Although not LinkedIn itself, just the way it's being used.
it's the influencer gets the job market. That's
Right.
that's how it looks to me sometimes when I looked at LinkedIn. Granted, there are a lot of top voice people in particular areas that I follow, and I see why they're a top voice because there's maybe not so many people regularly speaking about those topics, and they're the main ones posting about it. But otherwise, their content is great. But yeah, it's I don't know. I don't think you should have to be an influencer to find a job. Like
No,
No.
I have.
what do
To
employers
me,
expect? Am I spending full time applying for roles that I'm not getting because I need to be spending more time applying for roles that I'm not getting, but I also at the same time aren't going to be looked at for those roles because I'm not on LinkedIn 24/7 posting every
yeah.
45 minutes or something.
But even if you've got a platform, I mean, we've got the podcast, right? I mean, I know we have probably a couple of dozen dedicated listeners, or well, probably several dozens of listeners. I mean, we get intermittent hundreds of listeners and what have you. But even then, I remember in some of my cover letters with some jobs, I've mentioned that, I co-host and produce a podcast, and we're in the top 100. We're number 25 in Germany, and we have had hits in other countries. And yet it doesn't seem to really make any difference. And I'm thinking, well, if a company hires someone who's doing a podcast that is popular, that people really like and enjoy, bearing in mind we've done it from nothing, I'm thinking, well, why would you not at least give someone an interview you can mention your company on LinkedIn and get you more hits? So there is that influencer aspect, but I don't think that would be the only way. I think that if you're someone with also the years of experience, then you'll get more chance of the job than just the influencer who may not have that much experience.
Yeah, and I don't know. LinkedIn's weird too. Like I have a lot going on in my professional life and a lot going on in my personal life and a lot going on. I always have a lot going on, but more or less more than normal at the moment. And so I just haven't really been posting. I'm trying to do more writing, and I like to write in batches because if I'm actually getting ideas out, if I start publishing them and taking the time in between, sometimes I just slow down. Um, and so I haven't been posting a lot. And then I noticed the other day the same thing happened. It's like in a week and a half time, I think all my analytics on LinkedIn have like halved.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Mine half, maybe three quarters. But again, to be honest, I modified some privacy settings. I've made it more private, and yeah, I just wish there was a way to disable the feed on LinkedIn because every time I log into LinkedIn, right, and of course when you log in on the desktop version, because I'm not downloading the app on my new phone. Logging on desktop version, I can already see on the left-hand side how many views I've got, how many searches, and obviously the demographics, like who was searching for me. Was it a recruiter? Was it someone from this industry? Someone from that industry? But yeah, I generally ignore it just because, I get fed up of the types of posts that come up in my feed. Like it's always the same ones. So I think probably because I'm not posting, because I feel like I don't really want to post. That's the main reason why. Yeah, like you, Zach, my stats, my site analytics, or profile analytics to be more correct, have dropped significantly. Not that I'm really that bothered about it, because I'm thinking, well, it's not, 500 people could look at my profile, but if one of them, if not even one, is a recruiter who would want to get in touch with me about a potential job opportunity, it's not, it's not really that useful or relevant because analytics alone don't get you jobs. It's what type of analytic you're getting. So if you've got 500 people and you're not even getting one person, then most likely not one of them is a recruiter, or maybe they are and they're just not interested.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is it shouldn't matter how often I post. Like if I post
Right.
something, it should get it
Yeah.
that Yeah, the all the metrics in the world won't save you at some point when an algorithm controls everything. But it's
Hmm.
it's a little frustrating that you're not going to get seen if you haven't posted in a week, even if it's
Yeah.
because you took that week stepping your professional game forward, or maybe improving your game somewhere else. As far as like, I'm doing some more courses. I'm doing the Niels Norman UX Masters courses, and yeah, like I have time I have to spend on other things to improve myself, not post on LinkedIn and make sure I get the daily uptick.
Yeah. Well, I think actually regarding posts, it's not. I've found that the most popular posts are not because the content is great or because the message is even meaningful. It's just because they're an influencer. Like there's one certain person, I mentioned this before. He gets obviously so many likes for his posts, and yet I find his posts to be completely rubbish. It's like everyone's trying to be a philosopher, and they say something that is so obvious and so simple. Where 20 years ago, it was common sense to everyone, and yet they get huge amounts of likes. And yet I see the odd really good informative post that has barely got one or two. And of course, with those data analytics, the algorithm's not really going to pick that up. It's not going to bring it into people's feeds. In fact, my feed, when I log in, it's it's one of a few topics. It's either someone's like to post that's from someone who supposedly gets people jobs when they don't really do anything tangible. Second one, and I do have sympathy here, but I don't, especially from personal experience, I don't really agree with it. When people mention about their situations or they've been laid off or what have you, or three, it's something to do with someone, not a connection of mine, but obviously I've got a lot of connections that either follow or are connected with famous people or influencers, where they just like something that is seemingly profound but is actually hollow. They're really the three types of posts that come up in my feed. And I know that I'm not getting the posts that I would like in my feed just because they don't have a lot of hits or a lot of likes.
Now, as
I'm
far
sh-
as sorry, well, you can go.
Thanks. I'm sure part of it is our like human psychology of wanting to belong to a community. So like even if someone with 10K plus followers posts something and has a ton of engagement, and even if it's like kind of a garbage post, I'm sure a lot of it is people trying to get their own names and faces into the comment section just so that the rest of
Well, yeah,
the original
there is.
posters community sees them. I'm sure that's part of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Categorically, that is part of it. Because if you post on unpopular posts, you'll get noticed a little bit more. But again, the problem with that is it does detract from really valuable posts that can actually offer you something more tangible than simply getting a couple of views the day after, which will then peter out anyway.
Yeah, it's like we talked about another post that happened recently where somebody was I didn't mind that they were taking the side of a company that was laying people off, but the way they went about it and the opinion that they put forward was strictly to get reactions, but then they couldn't handle the reactions they were getting and were turning it into something bigger. But at the same time, it wasn't that the post was good. People hated the post, but because they were interacting with it, that thing exploded. And it was like, of course, Cross, if you haven't logged in a while, you're going to log in. And what do you see? Trash. It comes right up on the top with
Yeah,
10
yeah,
billion, comments on it. And yeah, that's where you can't really teach an algorithm, I guess, at this point. Like 10 million people
yeah.
liked this. Why? Well, because they liked it so that other people would get infuriated and comment on it.
Yeah,
Um,
and my sessions are fewer and far between with what you said, it's trash. So of course I'm less inclined to log on. In fact, that when we talked about let's just say that a certain person who was praising the layoffs. I didn't even see that in my feed. I think it was only because someone else mentioned it, or I had seen that you liked someone's post in response to that. But actually, yours, well, maybe not so much now, but actually, Zach, yours, and yours will as well, did actually come up more than obviously most of the other people. So I think the analytics are also
cool.
thinking about how long have I been connected with profiles and whether I'm engaging. I mean, we have to post our frame by frame, and obviously we all are connected to that. So perhaps the algorithm also includes the degree of connection with other people who interact with that post or page. I think. I don't know that for sure though.
That is definitely in there. I mean, if you remember, Facebook used to throw up. I don't think it was every year, but every so often I would get hey, you've been friends with this person this long. And what's funny is it was usually my youngest sister. And I was like, hey, do you know we've only been friends for this long?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been about almost 10 years since I had Facebook. And even when I had Facebook, actually, the analytics were a bit different. But there was one element that is the same, right? I had only, and I knew them all personally, I had maybe 21 friends, right? Just 21. But I noticed when on Facebook, and I think it is still happening now, generally it's only between 15 and maybe, well, 10 and 30% of your total friends, or maybe a quarter even, will engage in one of your posts. So, of course, I know that wedding posts or posts about people having kids are really popular. You'll get likes and love from your friends who probably wouldn't normally engage. Yeah, if you post something where it's just you just talk about your day, you're not going to get as many hits. But even when I only had 21, 22, I would probably get maybe 5 or 6 regular, I guess, followers, you could say, or people who would notice the post. So whether you've got 20, 100, 200, I think 250 is around the average, I think, the amount of friends people have. Of course, people with over 1,000 friends, you don't have. Sorry to say, no, I'm not sorry to say, you don't have 1,000 friends. They're people you meet on holiday. You say, yeah, I'll add you and everything else, and you never message them. But there are also analytics where you can really see who's engaging with you, and that's not just for Facebook. Obviously, it's for LinkedIn, it's for your portfolio, it's for anywhere really.
I just had to move to Germany and find out who would still contact me. Like it was easy to whittle out the tons and tons of friends you think you have, and then when you move, because I never always
Yeah,
lived in the same state. I traveled and I lived in Chicago for a while and a few other places, and even when you just move out of the city, like I lived in Mannheim here and moved out to where I'm at now, and even being 45 minutes away from where I was, I talked to maybe one of the people that I hung out with regularly there, if that makes sense. Yeah, so it's no different. If you drop off Facebook, you don't hear from anybody. You know what I mean? It's you disappear.
yeah. Although in my case, since especially being a recluse of sorts, I never worry about analytics. People know it's really almost impossible to get in touch with me, actually. Only Telegram, I would say LinkedIn, but I'm not really using it. So actually, for me, it's just Telegram, SMS. Yeah, okay, email. But I think sometimes, even for people, emailing someone can be just too much hassle.
Cross is going off the grid when you get in your tiny house.
As soon as I get the bricks to build it.
You don't need bricks, just a couple boards and some wheels, and you just tow that behind your bike or whatever you need. It's fine.
Oh, good. Oh, wonderful. I'll go steal some big cardboard boxes from the old Amazon warehouse I used to work at. I'll get some bubble wrap for insulation, better than fiberglass or asbestos. And if I get frustrated, it'd be a good stress relief as well because I can pop it. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
that, Zach.
perfect.
I'll go
Yeah, no
out
problem.
and pilfer some big
my wife would like to
boxes.
make a transition into tiny homes, and I told her no, no.
Yeah.
I told
well,
my
I've
fiance
already
no a long time ago.
Well, I already experienced a tiny home. My first flat when I moved here to Germany when I moved to Germany in 2014, it was an attic conversion, and I could only, with my height, I mean, I'm 2 meters. With my height, I could
You
only stand straight
just
in
crawling through there.
at the center, right on the center, on just under the center beam, and even then, the top of my head touched it. So for me, that was tiny living.
Well, what do you guys think? I mean, with I know we're talking analytics for your portfolios, but I mean, outside even with your portfolio, now we're talking like SEO, and then you're looking at the application tracking algorithms and AI systems, and now you have to play to all these things just to get not only your CV seen, but to get your
Yeah.
portfolio even looked at. And that doesn't even mean they're going to actually look at it. They're going to maybe go there and leave.
Yeah. Well, for me, regarding LinkedIn, I mentioned that I had updated my privacy settings. So actually, I don't even come up in Google on LinkedIn. There's a URL for linking to a post that is still cached, but unless you've got an account, you can't see it anyway. So I think that's also something that has reduced my hits, which for my portfolio, because it's a consequence of having fewer visitors to my profile. And of course, the fewer visitors I have on my LinkedIn profile, the even more fewer visitors I have on my portfolio as well. So they all do connect. The SEO, it all does connect. I mean, people Google Cross Preston, you're not really going to get a lot, especially not on LinkedIn now. I mean, I'm Googling it now, and there's my Medium that comes up. There's one post that you wouldn't be able to see unless you have a LinkedIn account. And then it just becomes the rest of the results are either British Red Cross or geography.
Well, there
So,
you go.
yeah, go
Yeah, but
figure.
to me personally, it's just an unnecessary pile of junk we have to attach to everything just to become visible
What's this?
anymore.
What's this? Why has someone created a Facebook account with my name?
Oh, that was me, man. You're gonna be famous.
Yeah, it's just a big C for and somehow it's in Icelandic.
Yeah, just
I
ignore the
wonder.
swimsuit pictures. That was that's AI.
Yeah, maybe it was our dear friend and colleague Anna, because she speaks Icelandic. I'll have to make inquiries. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I didn't notice that before. But yeah, that's the only thing. I don't know why someone would take my name, but okay. Yeah, sorry, Zach. Go ahead. I was just
Well, do you
searching.
think that trend will ever reverse itself? Like we're only having to attach more and more useless information to information that would actually be useful to hiring somebody. And it seems like a huge waste of time on our side. And then the company on the other side spends thousands to find out their AI and what they saw on paper was just not what they needed. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Is it going to reset, or is it just going to get worse? Like, okay, now I need to have an Instagram tied to a Twitter, X.
Yeah, I think it's going to get worse. I think pretty much you have to have all of these things. I know Threads is, garnered popularity. More people are having that because obviously it's connected to Instagram. It's Meta's own brand. The problem is,
I
it
refuse to
is
join
just,
Truth Network to get more visibility.
yeah. I just stick to the dark web. But that aside,
That's a different kind of visibility. I don't know if I want that.
oh, believe me, I've been on the internet about what, since I was 5, on and off. I know that sounds bad, but the internet was a lot safer in 95 than 2025. Yeah, I've seen it all, but they're not really. It's not really the place you want the analytics. You kind of give the analytics, but I think, but serious to be serious about that, I think it will actually keep getting worse. And the more that people do something, the more that people will be doing the same thing just to compete. We've seen it now where you don't just need to have a CV. Years ago, you could just have a CV, and then people started doing cover letters, and then gradually it became the norm. Now
So,
and then it was
I'm going to need a
portfolios.
designated TikTok channel for applying. Like
You
that
got
is
it. That's
what
right.
it's coming. It's seriously.
Yeah, it is, because it's not about what you're posting as exactly regarding your profession as a UX UI designer. It's more about, are you in with the trend? It's more, are you part of progress? And I hate these black and white conundrums because I don't believe in them. But it's that conundrum of, you're either going to move forward with the times or you're going to get buried behind in the past.
Yeah, but as a designer, I see TikTok only as a terrible design choice that's hindering human progression, and it's doing the exact opposite.
Yeah. I see TikTok as the bane of society and the downfall of mankind, to be honest, and certainly the killer of attention span.
Like, I'm not going to go dance in front of traffic just to get a job somewhere. Like that will never happen. So you can see my CV. I will,
Yeah. I
you
will
know,
never get TikTok, and even if I did, you're not going to see me post a video saying, "Oh my God," for 2 seconds long with some, I
screaming
don't
in a
know.
public bathroom.
Now,
Yeah,
to bring
yeah.
to bring up the past and the '90s, and I shouldn't do this because this is a massive can of worms that I should not be opening.
Were you even
You're-
were you even old enough to remember the 90s, Will? I know you were born in them, but were you old enough to remember them?
No, but I know history. So
Because
I
Zach and I were,
walked into
Zach
the
and I
90s,
were.
man.
Yeah, same here. I had a good time. I had a great time in the 90s. Well, when it came to video games, at least.
Mhm. So, on the topic of what else are we going to have to add for our job seeking, I almost want to draw a connection to the .com bubble crash of late 90s into early
Oh,
2000s.
yes.
Now, not exactly the same thing because we're not talking about companies crashing down. We're talking about a ton of tech layoffs. But
Yeah.
at that time, like, the .com companies became so overvalued, investor money ran out, and then eventually confidence fell, and then a bunch of companies disappeared. But some good ones stuck around, and that was pretty much the people who were good at it. I think we are encountering that same thing now. Like, a lot of now that the COVID stuff has calmed down, a lot of people are being laid off, and I think only the people who are really good at it are sticking around. Not that we can't get a job now, but I think
Wow.
the most secure positions are now going to the people who are really good at it and do good work. So I think if you want to stand out, I mean, of course, you should do weird things with your job applications, like doing a video CV instead. But in case you really don't want to take that route, I think it just comes down to doing good work and then networking and having people know that you're good at what you do. In that way, I think it's similar to the .com bubble crash or popping. That, like, you just got to
Yeah.
be good at it now. And like, we still have a lot of people who are competing for the attention, but unfortunately, if you can't back that up with the actual good work, then it's hard to make it actually.
Well, I
have the
think it's
success that
hard
way.
to. Well, I think it's hard to get your good work noticed. I mean, even if you have all of
That's
the
true.
platforms and the mediums, it's not a case of that gives you an advantage. It just means you've got less of a disadvantage in comparison to someone like me, who's a bit of a social, well, not a bit, a huge, gargantuan social Luddite. Right, let's be honest. And yeah, okay, I've grown up in the tech. I was in the first generation, the millennial generation, where I'm a digital native, if we have to use modern technology, modern terminology. Yeah, as much as I can understand new concepts, I understand how TikTok works, all the social media poppycock and nonsense. I still reject it. I still reject it. But then if we go back to analytics, am I really just rejecting possible bigger future analytics that could boost my portfolio? Maybe, maybe not. But then having said that, I think it's just that one person who looks at your portfolio that can give you the chance, whether it be a recruiter, a CEO, or someone who just knows that you're the type of person who could fulfill a particular role at a company that their friend owns, for example.
Well, that's where I think our listeners shouldn't get discouraged, because we're talking big analytics here, and like, I'm not trying to be anybody, if that makes sense. Like, as far as online presence goes, I don't want to be, the next influencer, creator, whatever. I just like talking as far as like LinkedIn goes with people who are interested in the same stuff I am, because I'm a nerd about design systems. I love it. So it's cool
That's
to
true.
dig up. It's cool to dig up people on there. But I think those are the connections because I'm regularly interacting with these people. I don't care how many clicks I get. I don't care if 1,000 people see my post or if that one particular person saw my post and we interacted with each other, because that's my goal. I want to have
Yeah.
conversations with
It's
these people that are doing the things that I enjoy.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, for me, I find it more engaging reading a long post, provided it's obviously interesting. I mean, I would rather read something that's a post that is sophisticated and really goes into depth about concepts rather than a post that might be, I think, a typical one I know of. Well, this was in a conversation, but if someone made a post saying, "Oh, I've had a really interesting morning. I normally have Cocoa Pops for breakfast, but this morning I decided to roll with it and try cornflakes." You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that is popular as posts, provided that you're already famous or you're an influencer. I mean, the kind of posts I see on LinkedIn by certain individuals is they say something, oh yeah, my top 3 tips. And I'm thinking, man, this is more like top 300 tips because your top 3 tips should be 3 really important ones, right? But they post a photo of themselves in another location or their home office, say some tips, and then just say a little short, succinct anecdote. Oh yeah, working from home, this is really good. Yeah, people like that kind of stuff if the person posting it is famous or they're influential in their given field. Whereas for me, well, I really don't like those kinds of posts. I don't follow people like that, to be honest. Whereas I'm more interested in the people that don't get a lot of attention on their posts, but they provide something where I finish reading it and I walk away thinking, ah, yeah, my creativity is stimulated, or there's a new concept, or I'm revising a concept in looking at an old concept from a different angle or dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think that's the hardest part with social media and the algorithm thing in general. Like, of course these people are going to get seen and looked at a lot. That's fine. That's their goal. But
Yeah,
as far as like new designers or even senior designers at this point, I know enough senior designers now to know that some of these guys haven't redone their portfolio in 7 years. And then you wonder, like, oh man, this is going to be rough, huh? And how do you go and build a brand new portfolio after 7 years of work? I hope you documented it all and very meticulously, because it's going to be tough. And but then again, they have 7 years of metrics they can throw in at headlines and just be like, hey, I designed this feature, and remember this update. Well, I was part of that company when they did that. And I mean, it
yeah,
helps with the years of experience, but it also doesn't help because if you're a senior and you're getting into your portfolio again because you need a new job because you were laid off, it's going to be rough. It's going to be a lot of time put into that portfolio. And then again, the market right now is not friendly to anybody, let alone, juniors, seniors. It doesn't matter. It seems like it really doesn't matter anymore.
yeah. Well, I mean, if someone's a senior designer and they've got years, I hate using this term because it's just so repetitive, and it's repetitious saying it, but years of experience. Would you say that you really, well, maybe now you do need to have a portfolio because it's just extremely competitive, regardless of the professional level you're at. But I would say that years ago, when I was doing web and graphics design, you didn't really need a portfolio because with the years of experience that you garnered or accrued, you were more of a name. Your name was your portfolio. So if you said, yeah, I was a graphics designer for 5 years at Google, and then I spent 3 years at Microsoft, especially 10, 20 years ago, I think that your portfolio would just be your name and your CV or resume.
I mean, if you were a senior working into your lead, like if I think Google had enough designers where they laid off so many and so many different levels that unless you were like really involved in long-term projects as a senior, like your name would only be known to other designers or other people specifically in that industry. I think that's the other part about hiring is some of these people hiring have no idea who they're talking to or what they're looking for. Like,
Oh, well, of course they don't. Of course they don't.
so that makes it equally as hard, but now you have seniors who haven't had to worry about it until now, and now they have to update their portfolio, but then make their portfolio and name re-noticeable. Like, I know there's a lot of seniors who have their LinkedIn game just fine. Like, they have a lot of followers, they post regularly. That's cool. The thing about followers is I don't care how many followers I have. If none of them talk to me, we don't message. I don't know who you are, so don't ask me for a job. Like that doesn't work that way.
Yep.
But if I've
Yeah.
talked to somebody a handful of times, and I like them, I respect them, maybe I don't even have to respect you. If I've communicated with you and you seem like you're an all right person, you have a better chance of me going out of my way to help you than somebody who's just like, I followed you. We've never messaged, but I followed you for 3 years and I saw your company's hiring. It's like, they are actually. Yes, they are hiring. Please submit an
Yeah.
application like everybody else. But if the next person comes across and they're like, hey, how you doing? I just got, laid off not that long ago. I'm having trouble. If I've interacted with you and we've had good
Yeah.
experiences with each other, then you're probably going to get your name in the hat. And I'm not going to tell you that you have to go apply like everyone else.
Yeah. Well, we had that post that I made where I spotlighted 5 or 6 people. They're all looking for jobs, and I had interactions with them, and actually, a handful, about half of them, messaged me saying how much of a positive effect our podcast has on them, and that the posts I was posting at the time, not the patronizing, hollow ones, all stay motivated, your time will come, all this rubbish and um, useless, all these useless posts. But I was making posts as in empowering people, which I think is one of the best ways to do it. But I showcased their portfolios because I had interacted with them. I saw their portfolios. I knew they could do the job. Like, for example, a friend and colleague of ours, I recommended her to Uzak. Um, and yet, if I hadn't have interacted with her, if I hadn't have worked with her, I might not have recommended her because I didn't have that interaction.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing is all the analytics in the world might tell you if people are interacting with your stuff, but none of it's going to actually tell you if what you're doing is of value.
Is going to get
Does
you,
that make sense?
yeah,
Like,
of value. Yeah.
especially with portfolios, I've talked to a lot of people recently. One in particular, we get involved with each other and posts on LinkedIn quite often, and they went out of their way to ask because they're redoing their portfolio, and I like their posts, I respect their opinion, and I was like, dude, I feel bad giving you portfolio advice because I'm redoing my portfolio, so it's a great time for us to talk about it anyway because it's something that's already on my mind, and B, everything I tell you is just my biased opinion of what I think a portfolio is based on what I would need in this moment. So unless you're a UI designer that and that's exactly what I'm looking for, I might be looking for a UX designer who dabbles in more research, or I might be looking for a UI designer who strictly sticks to UI. Like, that's your job. You don't touch anything on the other side unless you absolutely have to, but you need an understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I try not to tell people anymore because my opinion honestly doesn't effing matter. Like, it only matters if you're looking for a job and you come to me and ask me what I think. I will happily give people portfolio feedback on why I didn't. And you know what? Some people I click on their portfolio and it didn't get me what I needed within my required minute or two because I don't care. 30 seconds is not enough time. I don't care who you are. It's not enough time to look at a portfolio. So I always try to give every portfolio a chance, but there were some that I just closed out of, and I told them that I was like, don't flood it with information because I don't have the time to read, honestly. And if you knew my workload when I was hiring, I can't imagine a hiring manager has any less of a workload if companies are spreading out that workload on each individual employee that 3 should be doing. So I totally
Yeah.
understand why hiring managers are lazy, and they're like, if I don't have a flashing light in front of my face that gives me all the information about this particular case study that I'm shown first, then I don't care to see it because I don't have the time for it. And
Yeah.
so I
Exactly.
explained that to him, and I'm like, man, just make it for you. Like, that's all I tell people about portfolios. Just make it your portfolio. Like, as long as it shows who you are and shows why what you did was valuable, that's all your portfolio should be.
Yeah, I've not, when it comes to portfolios, there's been one or two people here in Germany. For those of you who aren't aware, Germany, there's a misconception that every single website has to have an impressum, which is basically just disclaiming the legal stuff, has to have your name, contact email, phone number, and address. There's a misconception. I actually bit my inside of my mouth in the week, so I've got a little bit of a slight impediment. But yeah, there's a misconception that every website in Germany has to have an impressum. It does not. It only has to have an impressum if you are selling services or it's commercial based. Other than that, you do not have to have an impressum. I don't have one. And I've been telling that on people's portfolios. I've been saying you don't need to have an impressum on it. Which is obviously not the same as helping someone with a portfolio in terms of the design or the information they have on it, but it's just giving relevant, pertinent information. But what I do is when it comes to people, if I've engaged with, maybe I should be doing this instead of certain people on LinkedIn, but I always send them links to jobs. I mention that such a company is recruiting. We obviously do spotlighting of profiles and portfolios. And I actually think if people want to help others get jobs, not just with analytics, but just in general, there should be more acting rather than reacting. And I just think that quite a lot of the time, posting or following people who have in their titles getting you that $100,000 UX design job or getting people in the industry, especially when you've not shown any evidence that you have. I think that I think people should focus more on getting their own visibility by their own metal rather than trying to post or like someone's post because they're popular with the belief that you're going to get a lot of popularity. I mean, if I get a job and I make a post about it on LinkedIn, people ask me, "Oh, what was your magic formula? Can you give me some tips?" I would say, "Yeah, my magic formula was to ignore what I'm reading on LinkedIn and to go with my own instincts and showcase your own personality." And I think in the long term, you'll actually get better analytics for your own individual portfolio, your individual profile. But the problem is nowadays is patience is not a virtue; it's a myth, and people just don't have the time now. There isn't for people. 24 hours is not enough in the day. But analytics can be useful for that. And I think if people want to get more positive, more numerous, plentiful analytics on their portfolio, I think you have to start relying on your own merit than trying to get noticed by posting on someone who is seen as having merit just because they've got thousands of followers, but actually they don't offer anything of merit, if that makes sense to you guys as well.
Yeah, the majority of the people like I choose to follow or interact with, especially on LinkedIn. Instagram is more artists and stuff, and I really because that's my other thing I do is like I've been painting the last week and a half as well. While I'm writing, I'll take a night and I go and paint. And I didn't have internet for a couple days, so that helped. But yeah, it's the more original the person is, the more I want to follow them, because even though we do a similar style of art or a similar medium of art, they have a different take on it. And it's the same reason I interact with other people who, develop
Yeah,
design systems or are graphic designers and have a really cool style. Like even David Knight, I really like his illustrations. They remind
he
me
is
of,
really good.
yeah, they remind me of
Yeah,
something. And yeah, so anytime I see him post illustrations, I love it, because we both do illustrations. So it's yeah, if I like your artwork,
yeah,
consider it a good thing, because
yeah. I'm
yeah.
I'm the same. I'm the same with as I'm connected with a really talented UI designer, and she does illustrations. Sophia Perez Navines. I recommend anyone. Okay, the gaming industry's sort of taken the bad turn, but if anyone wants really good illustration and UI design, she's definitely someone who would add a lot of credibility to a company. I like a lot of her work. I've seen her portfolio and I'm really impressed with it. And, she's not a famous illustrator, but actually, I think with her illustrations, she could be, because it's that kind of quality. And this is the thing, I like things that are unique. I mean, we mentioned the video game industry just to reference it because I think it's relevant to this is when you play a game and everyone realizes there's a really one way to be dominant, and then everyone follows that way, then the game producer releases something else and people keep jumping around, and you can't really be unique, because if you have a unique way that is clever, that is ingenious, it's just by design going to fail. You're not going to have a lot of success, and I think that's what we can say about the likes of LinkedIn and portfolios is that you sort of have to follow the trend of how to get followers or likes or attention, but you're not actually standing out by doing that
Yeah,
because you're
so
doing it's essentially what everyone else is doing.
yeah, I mean, if you see like 50, 60, 70% of the posts that start to come up after a while, they're all like, "Oh, how do you get more interactions? How do you get more engagement in your posts? How do you do this?" Well, I used AI with these 3 easy steps. You can all do it. And then you start to see more posts that look all the same. And they all say the same thing. And so, yeah, it's like anything else. I mean, after a while, even on Instagram, the algorithm starts to feed you similar things just over and over again. It's like, man, I only like that post because that was cool, but you're showing me 20 things that are exactly the same, and it's not. Yeah, I don't know. It's not
Yeah,
interesting anymore. It gets boring.
yeah, which is how it's got for me. Regarding LinkedIn, I was speaking to a friend who's also a fellow Career Foundry alumni. She's a UX UI designer, and we were talking about this, and she is also equally as critical of LinkedIn. I mean, it's also it's also more used as a dating app than it being a professional networking site. And that's the thing. That's another trend. Eventually, all good sites where you can connect, they all end up the same. In the beginning, Tinder was really good, and then it became people realized they could make money by flooding it with bots, scam accounts. Then there was Bumble, that ended up being the same. Then Hinge, and pretty much anything in any given industry ends up being the same eventually. And I really don't like things that are uniform, that are linear. I think the beauty of creativity is when it's unique.
Now let's go the Andy Warhol route. That seemed to go just fine.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, gentlemen, Will, do you have any closing comments, closing thoughts, like usual?
Yeah, so small one here. If you have Site Analytics hooked up to your portfolio and you notice that it is getting views commensurate with the amount of applications you're sending out, of course, not exact the same numbers because you're going to have people view it from all different sources, then hey, at least it's getting viewed. And if you're still getting no results, like no messages back, then hey, at least you know what you need to improve. So awesome. If you're not getting any views, then hey, something must be wrong with the way you're sending applications or your resume. But if you're getting views and no responses back, then something's up with the portfolio or the portfolio resume combo. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, that is very sound advice, and obviously, as always, we really hope that you gain something out of it. We really hope that you don't feel intimidated by how the current status quo is regarding job search, regarding portfolios. And we here at the Frame by Frame podcast, we never try and tell you how to do things. We always just prefer to give an objective outlook along with our own personal experiences, and in the hope that, as we've mentioned in the earlier on in this episode, that for us it's not about getting thousands and thousands and thousands of hits, but what is important to us is when we get the messages where we make a difference, where we help people. And that is, I think, what you should focus on. So take away the information and the value of this episode regarding data analytics. Yes. Do a summary of who's looked at your profile, your portfolio, where they've been looking from, how many hits a particular element in your portfolio has got. But it's not something you need to stress over, because you only really need to impress that one person, CEO, HR manager, or even just someone you connect with on LinkedIn who may be able to recommend you. That is the most important thing. So, in essence, don't focus so much on data analytics, but it is good for you to be able to empower yourself to cater your portfolio in a better way that will get you the more relevant data analytics rather than just any and all views and traffic. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. As always, we will be back. Perhaps next week will be our final episode in the season, or definitely in March, because like I've said in the pre and posts on LinkedIn, we do have a few ideas to revamp the podcast. Perhaps not so much the format, but we do have plans to enable more engagement, Instagram, dare I say TikTok. Although I'll let one of my co-hosts manage that, because I don't really want to have my soul tainted. I've never touched TikTok. I'm very proud of that fact, and I refuse to get Instagram. But anyway, thanks so much to all of you for joining in. Message us anytime. Follow us on our page on LinkedIn, the Frame by Frame podcast, and we're always on your favorite podcast broadcasting channels: Spotify, Apple, Podbean, and what's the other one, guys? We're on Spotify, Apple, Podbean.
We got Amazon and I think Google.
Amazon, yes, Amazon. Last but not least, Amazon. All right, everyone. So it's good night from Will and Zach and myself, and we hope you have a productive start to the week and that it's enjoyable. Thank you, everyone, and good night.